Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening from, and welcome to 1% Better, where we take a look at hidden stories in sports. I'm Xylon, and I'm joined now by Dr. David Lipman. Medical question for you is, I just traveled for 26 hours. I had 3 hours sleep during that time. I'm not feeling like myself. Medically, what's happening? What is that? Did you notice
Ah,
I just didn't have a medical question and just made it up on the spot, by the way?
I did notice that. I also noticed that you've reverted back to your like, how do I get the podcast to be advantageous to me only, and you use David to make the podcast advantage me. What's happening to your body? Well, firstly, your glucose is dysregulated. Metabolically, you're dysregulated because you haven't slept properly. Um, yeah, you got a lot of like adenosine accumulated in your brain, causing sleep pressure. Yeah, there's lots of things happening. Your blood pressure's up a little bit. All those things. Your body temperature's up a little bit, no doubt as well. So yeah, mate, eat properly, sleep, you'll be fine.
What is eat properly? Is that electrolyte and protein, and I'm guessing hydrate as well, maybe electrolytes.
Hydrating, yes. Protein, sure. I mean, the big thing is that like your glucose is a little bit dysregulated, so like being a little bit lower carb for a little while may help prevent some of the like sort of consequences of that. But like we're probably rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Like it's probably not the end of the world. Like just sleep a bit extra is probably what I'd
Mm.
say. Do all those things. Probably the biggest. I'd say that the biggest issue with that sort of travel is the lack of movement for that period of time. That the rest of it is what it is, and the consequences of like lack of sleep are what they are. But like the lack of movement is a real consequence and a real problem. They said, I had a medical school lecturer who used to say stasis is the basis of all disease, and stasis being not moving. So yeah, moving is really important.
Interesting. I did have like a 6 hour layover in Cape Town, and got together with a friend who's a magazine publisher, and we were talking about that very thing. How he's such a big advocate for movement. He's in his 50s now and in such great shape, despite also having back problems. And yeah, he was saying movement is the secret. I will be hydrating with Precision Fuel and Hydration today for sure. I'll be getting into the electrolytes. And by the way, on this episode, we've got Dan Jones, one of their athletes, top trail runner in the world, top 5 Western States guy. We sort of announcing him as someone to look out for in the future for that top step. He'll be
Mate,
joining us
mate,
shortly.
that's a little bit late, but yeah. Dan's, Dan does join us here. I mean, he's really interesting. Like, he's got a lot of case studies on their website. I've talked about their case studies and the learning before. But looking at him, he seems to sit between 90 and 112 grams an hour of carbs, and then like 500 to 700 milliliters an hour of fluid, depending on the conditions. Those are in the hotter races that he seems to hold that, which is, I'd say, like fairly high carb intake, but not that high a fluid intake. And he sort of talks a bit about that in our interview later. So, yeah, lovely dude. Great interview. I think people get a lot out of it. And again, as you say, it's certainly one to watch this year in Western States, looking at the fields, particularly at this stage. He would be one of the people are picking for the podium, I would suggest.
If you'd like to check out Precision Fuel and Hydration, we do have a 15% off your first purchase discount code. That discount code is the number 1PB2025. We also have a link in the show notes down below, so check that out. What is happening up for you? You've signed up for a race. I saw you put on Strava. What's up with people who, can people please tell me, talk to me about those who need an event for motivation and those who don't need an event? They'll have structured
No,
training.
the question was, can people who need an event for motivation, what does that look like for you? Is it that you go from zero motivation to 100%, or you go from destructured training to structured training? Is it just, oh, the last 5% helps me with motivation? Or is it like, oh, when I have an event, I'm a little bit more locked in? Because I was just trying to understand that, because I hear people say this all the time, I need an event on the calendar. And
Mm.
I'd never felt that before. I'd never in my life felt that before. And I thought, oh, maybe if I put an event on the calendar, it will change how I feel, right? Maybe that'll change for me. So that's part of why I asked the question. So I put an event on the calendar. It's a 28K trail race. I was torn between the 28K and the 20K. I wasn't sure. It's like, I could probably do the 20K pretty easily. It's not risky. And I was like, well, do I want something that's not risky, or do I want something that's a little bit of a challenge that I'm going to have to train a little bit for? And I was like, okay, well, let's go for the second one. I feel no different. So let's see how we go. I mean, I am excited to do that race because it's in a beautiful part. It's not too far from our place in France. It'll be really nice. It's in June next year, so it'll be nice. Like, I'm keen to have a good day out. It's interesting to see I'm interested to see how I respond to all this. How much do I lock in? How serious do I get? When the gun goes off, am I happy to just jog it, or am I going to have to, go hammer and tong? So yeah, it'll be interesting for me to see as I sort of have. I don't want to say transition, but certainly changed my focus a little bit in the last, call it 6 to 9 months. So yeah, it's interesting, mate. We need you back moving as well because this podcast isn't doing well from a performance standpoint, mate. Where are you at with everything?
It's quite interesting. So I'm just over a month out from spinal fusion, and I haven't done a lot of exercise the last few weeks, just based off of travel. How much I've been traveling, having long haul overseas trips. I've been to London to see you. I've just come back from Spain yesterday, and therefore I haven't been working with my biokinetics. So I've done almost nothing apart from walking here and there, and the nerve has actually been in the least amount of pain it's been in a long time. So I find that very interesting. I wonder if through not doing like strength work and other stuff, if I haven't been aggravating it and it's been giving it some time to recover, which is very interesting for me. I am going to go for a bike ride today. I've decided. I've woken up. I need some movement as we talk. When I say bike ride, probably like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and see how the nerve responds to that, just because I need movement and I need exercise to bounce me back. I haven't been on a bike in months and months and months, but I found that interesting. Yeah, I don't know what that is with the nerve.
Well, it's always hard to know what's going to annoy it, right? So you guys were trying to do the right amount of stuff, and yeah, maybe you overshot it a little bit, but it's hard to know, mate. There's lots of factors in there. It's always messy. I thought we talked about you now only riding on the indoor trainer because it's better for your nerve. I thought that was the discussion.
Yeah, I need to get outside into fresh air. I can't. I've been indoors for weeks and weeks working. Like I need to get outside.
Okay.
And for me, I'm like 5 weeks out from operation. Like who cares? Honestly, I'm going for a 20-minute bike ride outside, 30 minutes. Like who cares? It's not going to do irreparable damage.
And nothing you were doing was ever going to cause irreparable damage, but your point's well made, which is you'll be okay. It's interesting to see how this switch has flipped in you now that you made the decision to get surgery. It's actually interesting. We're reviewing a little bit of stuff. Next week's episode, we'll be doing a wrapped episode for the year, where we'll look at what's coming up next year, what we thought of this year, etc., and some predictions we made last year and goals we set. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff there from our goals from last
Oh,
year.
I'm
So
looking forward to that.
yeah, so am I.
We are supported by Stride. You shared with me some emails that they release weekly. It's very, very interesting. Talk to me about that. What would we find interesting about that?
Well, they release this workout of the week, and I always look at them because one of the things that happens, particularly for me, is I get sort of stuck in some habits around programming, and so they've got these workouts of the weeks that they release that are different workouts for different race, like 5K emphasis or marathon or whatever, and it's quite cool. And they just released a blog and an email, and I've linked to the blog in the show notes with some of the best ones of the year. So obviously these workouts are built for running with power, and if you have a subscription, you can download them to your watch and just go for it from there, which is really cool. But I mean, you can learn from them, just reading them and learn from them. But you can also roughly change it to pace. Now, in a vacuum, pace and power are the same, which is to say, yeah, maybe on a treadmill or on in perfect conditions, no hills on a flat road, they're pretty similar. Now, the reason that power is advantageous is that it does account for those things, so you can adjust across wind and adjust across hills. But regardless, there's some learning there, and there's some good workouts there that I've been looking at, going like, oh, maybe I want to do that one. So I'm probably finding more inspiration out of an interesting workout at the moment than I am out of an event. So maybe there's something there for me to click on.
We also do, if you'd like to check Stride out, have a look at our show notes. We do have a direct link unique to this podcast for you to check them out, which helps us out. Some community shout outs to get through. The first one being Brett Goldfinch. He did the 90 minutes at Victor Harbor half marathon. So well done to you, Brett. That's quick, isn't that? Wow, 90 minutes.
Yeah, 90-minute half marathon. That's good. That's good
That's quick.
pacing. It's
Yeah.
done well. Yeah, yeah. Victor Harbour's a lovely part of South Australia. I've been down there, down just outside Adelaide, or just sort of outskirts of Adelaide. So yeah, I had a friend from medical school there who was talking to me about how great Adelaide was, and at one point I just said, "Fine, I'll come see you there then. Show me around." So he took me to Victor Harbour, which was lovely.
Couple other shout outs to get through. Petrus van der Merwe did the Tigerberg FBOB 15K race in 68 minutes. And then Christian Trampuda, who seems to be racing all the time, did a fast 5K in
He's
Como, 15:57.
Yeah, that is very quick. I mean, he's a huge volume guy, a lot of running in Como and a lot of it the same run. So like super motivated there from Christian. So it's cool to see. I think I can't remember what he's training for. I saw something, but yeah, exciting stuff from Christian there. And then congratulations to Greg Laxton, where did Ironman WA, got sixth in his age group, went 9:05, which is really impressive. And then John Burchett Sharp, we talked about this heading to Valencia. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, and he got about, I think it was 14 Ks into the Valencia Marathon and then DNF'd it. And sort of, obviously, he wasn't stoked with that, but it's probably cool that he got to be on the start line and see that. And yeah, so hopefully, swift recovery, John.
Phil Coleman went 3:28 in Valencia. He finished, and then Karen Green debuted at Hyrox. She went 1:23 there. Every single third person I'm talking to at the moment seems to be doing Hyrox,
Well,
blowing up.
we're going to talk a bit more about Hyrox coming up actually, and then I wanted to give a bit of a shout out. I don't know if Eamon Ring deserves a shout out, but he ran the Indy 5K at the running event down in down there, and the reason I say he may not deserve it is because he's an unbelievable athlete, and this 5K he ran 30 minutes in it, and I reckon for Eamon he could probably do that on his hands. He could do that handstand walking. He's that good an athlete, so I guess I'll give him a shout out, but begrudgingly.
We are supported by Core Body Temperature Sensors. They're bringing you Dan Jones today. We had a fantastic chat with him from New Zealand. That is coming up shortly. But we are currently still running the Core Body Temperature competition on our Instagram, where we are giving a sensor away. That has blown up completely. Have you seen that? Our Instagram is blown up thanks to that competition.
Yeah, we also had somebody. Let me actually check this. I'll give this guy a shout out now because I saw it this morning. It was quite funny. I assume this is a conscientious objector to Instagram. It was Earl B. Hoy on Spotify.
I
He
saw
commented. He
that.
said, "Come on, Instagram is fit for losers. I'd love the core." So
Very
yeah,
strategic doing it on the Spotify platform where we don't get that many comments, and he knows he's going to stand out.
yeah, I like it. It's good from Earl. So no, that's great. But yeah, the competition is still going. Go check out our Instagram. You'll see it there. You made an unbelievable graphic, mate. So thank you for doing that. But yeah, basically pretty standard stuff. Follow us and Core on Instagram. Comment on the post. We're going to draw a winner and announce it on the podcast. We'll announce that next week at the time of record. Well, the next episode people hear after this one will be where we announce that there. It's one entry per person and fair terms apply, of course, there.
Right, let's have a look at what's come across my desk. Just some quick bits for you. Courtney Dauwalter ran CIM. That is the California International Marathon, I believe also sponsored by Precision Fuel and Hydration.
Yeah, they are the title sponsor. They do all that stuff. So she ran 2:38:55, which is about 1 minute off the Olympic trials qualifier, which is a big mark
Whoa.
for Americans. So they have Olympic trials. You have to qualify for them. She got very close to that. She said I read a bit of a post from her. She said she was on pace until about 31 Ks and fell off the group, which I'm assuming was the Olympic trials qualifier pace. She said she was keen to do another marathon, and that's pretty impressive running from her. 2:38 is moving for her, or was moving for anybody, but certainly moving for somebody who does, she'll go win a 200 miler. So she couldn't be less optimized for a marathon. I reckon with another marathon build, she's probably close to like mid to low 230s. I think if she does a serious job there. And I've certainly heard some whispers about that Salomon Super Shoe, Road Super Shoe, which is meant to be unbelievable.
Also in different clothing, just a change of shorts, I reckon will shave 2 minutes off. But I love the way she dresses. We've talked about on the
No,
pod before how she stands out with it.
the short knees are going to stay. They are not changing.
We talked about Hyrox shortly. I believe they've partnered with Lucid, who's an EV maker. So obviously they're getting some commercial backing going into them off the back of them blowing up.
Yeah, when I saw this, I was like, anybody who thinks Hyrox is a fad has just been proven wrong. Like, this is a huge signal. It really bolsters their Olympic hopes, of course. Like everybody, candidly, everybody like events are chasing non-endemic sponsors, right? We talked to Colleen Quigley about this sort of thing. Non-endemics are like the big one, and this is that. This is a huge non-endemic sponsor. I saw a thing in the article I read about this. It said Hyrox is now in 30 plus countries and expecting 1.3 million participants next year, which seems low to me. It feels like that's many, many more, but perhaps it's just we are seeing so much of it in the running space, so many runners doing a Hyrox. But if you were to say they're expecting 1.3 million, you got to bet over under. Is it going to be over under 1.3? I'm going to say over. I'll take the over on that.
Mm.
for next
Yeah,
year.
interesting. And then we're recording this off the back of Ironman 78.3 having just been taken place in Bahrain, and some records were broken there. Even though I saw the fields were very small, so I was very surprised. You're going to talk shortly about Georgia Taylor Brown breaking the 70.3 record, and then I went and looked at the results, and I think there were only 4 or 5 women who finished, something like that.
Yeah, I think the pro race was pretty small. Georgia Taylor Brown must have an association with this race because her and her partner went. They both went last year. She won this last year, so I've got a feeling she's got a bit of a relationship with the race somehow. This happens.
They supported by Bahrain. They supported by the Prince of Bahrain. They're part of the Bahrain triathlon team.
That'd
Both
be
of
why.
them.
So
Yeah.
there you go. That'd be exactly why. So, but interestingly, I was trying to work out if there was something special that happened today, but she's just in good form. She went 3:51 to better Daniela Reef's 7-year-old record, which was 6:36, which seems really. Oh, sorry, by 6:36. Sorry, by 6 minutes 36. It wasn't 6 hours 36. I was going to say that seems like a big break.
I've gone faster
Um,
than that in a 70.3.
yeah, exactly. So she came fourth at the Ironman 70.3 World Championships, but it must have been a good weather day because it's a big margin to break it by. Like regardless of who else is in the race, and maybe not regardless of it, because she wasn't pushed. That speaks even more to how impressive this is. But I mean, she's the Tokyo 2021 Olympic Games silver medalist, and she's going to the next Olympics, or she's hoping to, after taking a bit of a gap year this year, which I think is pretty common, particularly for Olympians, and certainly in triathlon. It seems they're all doing something, right? She's gone upper distance. Alex Hughes running marathons, and I had somebody ask me, one of our listeners, Pablo Schmartz, was asking me about this, and yeah, I just think that they need a mental refresh. And you're still doing endurance sport, you're still training, but it's just a slightly different, right? Because like for Georgia, it makes some sense, but for Alex, it's a bit, the thought is it's a bit risky. He might lose some speed or something like that. But I reckon it's just helping him. It's going to help his run more than it's going to hinder it. And again, the alternative is you force him to keep doing triathlon and he burns out before the next Olympics. So, a 90% Alex Yee is better than a zero, than no Alex Yee, right? So it all makes some sense there to mentally refresh.
So interesting. And then World Athletics, talk to me about this, man. They've dropped the takeoff zone idea for a long jump.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar with long jump from school, there's a board. You have to run up to the board and you jump, jump, and you can't go over the board. There was this, and what you'll see that we talk a lot about this podcast is like adding sports science to things and data. And what you'll see is there's always like a margin that's given. It's like, oh, he was 6 centimeters short of the takeoff zone, so whatever, or 6 centimeters short of the edge of the board, so he's got 6 centimeters to optimize. Conversely, they can go over the board, right, and then they'd be over by whatever 7 centimeters. The thought was here, let's have a zone, and if you take off in that zone, sorry, and also your long jump is measured from the front of the board. So from the front of the board to where you land. So if you take off too far back, you're obviously wasting jump distance. And so the board is also then hard to take off on because you have to be very specific with where you're jumping from, etc., etc., etc. There is this thought of like, let's just make a zone of, let's call it 1 meter, 2 meters. I don't actually know what they were going to propose. And you jump from there, and we measure from where your foot is and how far you jump. And so what that means is they can go a lot faster, focus a lot less on the board, and therefore the jumps would improve in distance, and there'd be less fouls and all that sort of stuff. So the thought is this will be better for spectators. The jumpers like revolted against this. They didn't want this. And I agree with that because there is a skill component to this. And I think it's important. And there's certainly some jeopardy of guys and girls having to still hit this. It sort of adds a layer of jeopardy rather than just having a punt and seeing who can jump the furthest. I mean, yes, it is a competition to see who can jump the furthest. So we want to see that, but you still get to see that big jump even if they foul. So I think it's quite cool, the jeopardy of having a potential to foul there. But I do see this as a potential alternative, maybe early in the season, kind of like you have a 600-meter race for the 400-meter runners or the 800-meter runners, or you have a 300-meter hurdles for the 400-meter hurdles guys. It's like, well, let's do a takeoff zone and see who can do it, and like let these guys and girls really give it some and see what happens as a sort of alternative to their normal event, right?
I'd agree with that. That's a great point, actually. And yeah, we talk about this. We talk about storytelling on this podcast all the time, and the basis of storytelling being you don't know what the outcome is going to be, success or failure. And jumping off the board in long jump, that's one of the first things you look at after they've landed. You go back to, was that a legal jump? How close did they hit? That's one of the biggest draws in that event. So I can see most people being against that.
Yeah, agreed.
You sent me this. FIFA is trialing a new rule. This being football, soccer, they are always looking at alternatives, adjusting things, and now they are looking at one of the biggest they're trialing one of the biggest changes the game has seen yet.
Well, I'd argue that FIFA's or football's pretty stable because it's such an old sport with such simple rules. It's actually they don't trial too much stuff. They probably try to innovate quite a bit, but I'm not convinced they trial as much as say rugby does or some of these other
Mm.
sports where there's like forever a rule change, right? So I'd say it's more stable, which is a positive thing for fans because you don't have to keep up with it. But this
Well,
is an interest.
I think it's a new thing that they are trialing stuff. Like they've
Yeah,
changes in the Premier League this year is lately they've obviously gone from 3 substitutions to 5 substitutions. And when a goalkeeper has the ball in his hands, he can only have that ball for 8 seconds. If he takes longer than 8 seconds, like goalkeepers are known to be time wasting, the other team automatically gets a corner. So they brought in all new things like that that is
I
changing the
did
rules
not
of the
know
game.
that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I've always said there should be a half court rule. So I don't know if you know how much you know about basketball, but in basketball, there's a rule where if you bring it across the halfway, you can't take it back.
Oh,
And
really?
so, yeah. So I've always said that there should be a halfway rule in football.
Interesting.
Once you
Yeah.
go into the half, you shouldn't be able to bring it back because that would encourage more attacking play and it would prevent guys sort of playing possession and keeping it back and going that way.
Mm.
Now, the purists hate that thought, but I'm like, I think this would be fun to watch. It'd be interesting to see that. But anyway, this is a trial in the Arab Cup, and no doubt they're looking to bring it forward. But basically, anybody who goes down, people who watch football would know this. You go down, you're down. If the trainer comes on, you have to go off the field, right? Then they come straight back on. It's a bit ridiculous. They're now going to force those people to stay off for 2 minutes. And the whole goal here is to remove simulation, which I think is a great way of doing this, is like actually create a consequence for it. It's like, it's not a negative thing, but it's like, hey, you're off for 2 minutes. And so then people are going to be a bit more thinking about it. And I think, firstly, I agree with this. And secondly, I'd like to see anybody staying down in rugby to be required to take an HIA. Because if people
Mm.
are, simulating in rugby to show that there's been head contact so that the referees check it and give a card, it's like, okay, well, you're going to go for an HIA if you're going to do that. So it's not just I'm staying down to stay down because there's no consequence for me. It's like, okay, yeah, but then you have to be off the field for a period of time and see what that does to players, right? And see if they still simulate as much. Because I think part of the problem in both sports is that the outcome is changing the result of the ruling. So if somebody goes down and just gets back up and keeps running, they don't give a foul in football. And in rugby, if they don't see it, you don't stay down with a head like potential head contact, they don't rule it. The outcome is dictating the ruling, whereas it should be the process. You've either fouled or you haven't. You've either hit the guy in the head or you haven't. It's not about whether the consequence of that, because you're trying to discourage the behavior. I'm trying to prevent you from doing the wrong thing. It doesn't matter what the consequence of that is. It shouldn't matter what the consequence is, right? So I think that I'm a bit frustrated with all the simulation and that sort of stuff. So I think creating not a negative consequence, 2 minutes off the field isn't big. Getting an HIA is not a big deal. You'll pass the HIA quickly, fine. There's certainly an argument with the HIA, like, hey, you don't want to swamp the doctors, you don't want to create too many false ones because they're going to do it wrong or whatever. Fine, I understand that, but I certainly think they should be taken off and assessed at least on a cursory level, because if they're going to stay down, like that's obviously enough to warrant it.
Yeah, you actually get a lot less simulation in football now. That's my view of it. That's not factual, because the game just carries on. The only place they stop the game is if you're holding your head. So if there was a head contact, that's the only place the referee is stopping the game now. And then yeah, if they do get treatment, they have to go for 30 seconds. So increasing this to 2 minutes, I think will have a real effect. 2 minutes is a long time to play with just 10 men. But I am fascinated by your HIA opinion, because obviously in rugby, my curse review, if I just think of this off the top of my head, in rugby there's a lot more head contact, and that head contact I think has the potential to be more severe because of the position of tackling. You are going in, bending, like you're bending and your heads are going towards each other. In football I think there are head knocks, but I don't think it is as severe, most of them, because or maybe it is
Well,
because they're going for the ball. They're trying to hit the ball with force, and if you then
yeah,
make
but
contact
there's
with another player,
how many headers do you reckon there are in a game? Contested headers. Like,
hundreds.
you think there's over 100 contested headers in a game?
Yeah,
I reckon it's less than that. I reckon it's way less than that. Contested headers where two guys are going for the ball. I reckon you'd be lucky if it was 50.
yeah, probably about 50, probably about, because you get depending on corners. So there are loads in
Yep.
corners. So let's say a team there's 10 corners a game, and then maybe another 40 throughout the game or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, 10 corners either way, plus then another 30 in the game, I think would be quite a bit, right?
yeah.
In rugby, that like you're talking about multiple people involved with tackles all the time. It's the primary aspect of the sport. You're talking about rucks as well, all this stuff. Like there's just so many more opportunities for it. The velocity is much
Mm,
higher because when you're going to header a
yeah,
ball, you're not going at each other. You're going on a vector. Whereas in rugby, you're
yeah,
going towards each other. But there's also, it's not just head next to head. It's head next to shoulder. It's head next to knee. It's head next to all these
yeah,
things,
yeah.
right? So yeah, there's tons of it. There's friendly fire, all of it. So there's I don't think there's any debate that there's more risk to your head and your brain in rugby than there is in football.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, soccer, that is, not American football.
Without a doubt, man. Let's move on. Valencia Marathon happened last week, and there were fast times as usual. I couldn't. You saying the coverage was amazing, like always. I couldn't find the coverage, which is ironic because I was actually about maybe 40 minutes away from where the race was taking place, and I had a bit of a break, and I was trying to find it on local Spanish TV and couldn't find it. But what went off at Valencia?
So it's available. Yeah, there's a ton of ways to watch it, but anyway, it's always hardest in the country it's from because there's all sorts of rules. So lots of stuff happened. Firstly, um, we talked about Tom Evans racing it. So I saw him as a DNS, a did not start. I saw him put out a social post saying he's prioritizing his family, and I also saw that he got into Hard Rock, which is July 10th. Hard Rock 100. It's one of the big trail races in America. He's on that start list, including Caleb Olson, of Western States fame from last year, and then Courtney Dauwalter as well. So that'll be a stacked field. It'll be really interesting to watch. So I did notice that. I also sent you a post from Laura Hottenrott. So Laura is a German road and trail athlete, and she said she's got no bottles. She doesn't get an elite start, so she can't perform. So she pulled out, which is interesting because it made me think about this like funny space. So she ran 2:24:32 in Valencia in 2023. So she couldn't get an elite bib this time. Uh, there's this interesting place between elites and sub elites where this stuff makes a difference. So for her, for me, having bottles or whatever maybe makes a difference, maybe it doesn't. But for her, it makes a huge difference. And I often think that there are people who are running, say, I don't know, let's call it as a man, if you're running like 220 without bottles, it's much more impressive than someone who's running, say, 219 with bottles because it's a huge difference for these people. Um, but I do think we're going to see, again, like early prediction, we're going to see a rise of events aimed at her demographic. Her demographic being that sort of sub elite trying to crack it. And then we've already seen this with the Marathon Project, which is in a week or two's time, where it's set up specifically for these people. You apply to enter, it's fast, it's paced, and everybody has bottles and that sort of stuff. So I do think we're going to see a bit of a fragmentation here where we start to see like this sort of sub elite tier being catered to allow them to run fast enough to then gain entries into elite fields elsewhere. And it will be a bit of a thing to go to. And to some degree, that's what Valencia is big for.
Yeah, and let's keep an eye on it. I just, out of everything you said, I have not listened because I'm still thinking about her name, Laura Hottenrod. I think that's such a cool name.
Anyway,
Uh,
I also saw that another thing that caught my eye before I guess before, like, rather outside of the races, they were talking about Emma Bates has never raced outside of America, which
oh
was
wow,
really wild to me. And Emma has had a really successful career, probably like when we talk about commercial standpoint. So I hadn't really considered this, but there's no reason for her to leave. She can run 3 races a year in America, 3 marathons a year in America. She doesn't, but she could, right? She could do all this stuff. She gets money. She gets more money in country. She'd have American fees. She'd be winning American only prize money. She also saves it by not traveling, and there's less, travel consequence. But I also wonder if there's a missed opportunity because she's less of a name outside of America. But also, I wonder how this impacts America's. If this is happening a lot, if it is, how this impacts their ability to have success on a world stage, right? Because now you're not traveling as much, you're not as used to that. You don't get used to performing in that context. So it
mm,
it really does interest me how that looks. I mean, you could argue that the counterpoint to that is Clayton and Connor Mance, right? Because they perform. But yeah, it's interesting to think about why they can have so much depth in the US, and certainly on the women's side, and not necessarily be performing in international races in a way that maybe the Australians are or something like that. So it's quite interesting to think about.
yeah.
But anyway,
Coming from a big country, coming from a very strong economic country, yeah, that's actually a really good point. But what happened in the men's race?
so Korea won this thing. He paced it really well. I really liked he had the belt celebration. He did like the championship belt celebration. So he's around a PB, eighth fastest all time, ran 2:02:25. Abinel Petros paced this thing so well. He was sort of off the back in the second group, and he came through, got second. I think it's his third second for the year. So poor bloke, but he's having a blinder of a year. Ran a PB, took the national record back, ran 2:04:03. It's a German national record there. And then there was a debutant in third from Norway, Awet Kibrab, and he ran 2:04:25 to take the national record there from Sondre Moen. And then in fourth was Suguru Osaka and he ran a Japanese world record by a single second. Ran
Whoa.
2:04:55
It
for fourth.
counts. It counts.
Yeah, it counts. And he's stoked. He's previously held it. I think that's his third time holding it as well. So there's 3 national records and a PB in the top 4. In seventh was Alex Yee, obviously ran a PB, and he's now second fastest Brit of all time behind Sir Mo Farah. He ran 2:06:38. And then Phil Sessman, previous podcast guest, ran a PB by 7 seconds. He ran 2:07:11 in 14th. He put out a good video reviewing this on YouTube. I think he's pretty happy with it. It does change some of his plans for next year. You're a big deal when you've got Renato Canova walking through your YouTube video happily giving you advice. So it's quite cool to see.
I need to check that out. Well, this
Renato
is interesting because we had Phil on the podcast a few weeks ago where the week of Amsterdam Marathon, and he PB'd that week. I think that was 8 weeks before Valencia. So to PB again, I find that interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it was probably hard for him to sort of back up in that respect. Maybe not physically, but maybe emotionally a little bit. He said it was certainly, he had to dig harder and he had worse patches in this than Amsterdam in the video. I won't ruin it for people. Go watch it. It's a cool video to see. You see, Emil Caress in there. You see Alex Yee, Renato Canova. So he obviously pays a cameraman to go with him, which is amazing. So the footage is really good as well. So yeah, super cool to see all that. And yeah, it is tough. I'm not sure he'll do that again from the sounds of things, but let's see. It's a good experimenting for him. The thing that Renato Canova said to him was like, "You've raced twice in 8 weeks. Rest now." Yeah. Which I thought was a pretty sage take from the old wise man. But in the women's race, Jep Kosgei got the course record. She ran 2:14 for a PB and 4th all time. Jep Churchier was sort of with her for a large portion of it, but then dropped off a bit. So she got a PB. She ran 2:14:43. These are the 2 fastest times of the year. And Jep Churchier came off the back of the world champs as well. So we're seeing these more and more people backing up, running 2-3 races a year, 2 in quick succession. Of course the shoes are part of it. Of course nutrition's part of it. It's just fascinating to watch the cultural shift as well in that respect. Probably a surprise packet in third was Chloe Herbier. She ran 2:20:38 for third. That's a Belgian national record. So I don't think anybody was picking her for a top 3. I'd never even heard of her. And then again in fourth, Elisa Vino was 2:20:48 for a new Finnish national record. And then in fifth, Jess Stenson ran the Australian national record in 2:21:25. And then on to the Americans. Emma Bates got 13th in 2:25:51. She jogged across the line looking pretty comfortable. I think she probably eased off a little bit towards the end. I think she probably wasn't running well and jogged it in a little bit. I don't know how happy she'd be with that. And then other national records, we had Julia Meyer. She lowered her own Austrian national records. Previously set at Valencia, she ran 2:26:09. We had top British finisher was Lily Partridge in 2:27. 55. Charlotte Purger was an unfortunate DNF. Kira D'Amato from America was 2:28:14. And then 2 other national records. We had Shresha Santoshi from Nepal. She ran 2:40:23 for a national record. And then Bibiro Ali Taya from Chad, who ran 2:46:41. So as per usual, all the national records fall. And here we go. So Valencia being a big deal. It's just big.
We spoke about that a year ago, and it was exactly that we were talking about national records again. Right, let's get to Dan Jones. We've teased him for a long time. We had a fascinating chat with him. Without further ado, let's hear from the man himself. Dan Jones is a professional ultra trail runner and coach, originally from Whakatane in New Zealand. Having grown up in a family with a strong multisport history, Dan ran competitively during school and gained a scholarship to Eastern Kentucky University, where he completed his Bachelor of Business Administration in International Business. After completing his MBA at Sam Houston State University, Dan moved back to New Zealand and pursued a career in finance with PwC. Whilst living in Wellington and competing in multi-sport races, Dan started to focus more on running again and found himself shifting his focus to the marathon. Following an impressive start to his marathon career, including winning Auckland Marathon 3 times in a row, Dan shifted his focus to the trails. Dan has 3 wins at Tarawera 100K, a top 5 at CCC race at UTMB, and 3 top 5s at Western States, amongst a host of other impressive performances in trail running. He holds PBs of 2:16 in the marathon, 67 in the half marathon, and 31:30 in the 10,000 meter. Having recently embarked on perhaps his most significant challenge, he is the new dad to Hudson. He joins us today, hot off the back of a win at GPT 100 mile stage race in Australia and the Kepler Challenge in New Zealand on behalf of Core. Welcome to one of the men with the most generic English names in the world, and we have to figure out which Dan Jones this is, but welcome, Dan.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's great to be here. And when you said generic, it just rang a bell. There was actually another Dan Jones racing Kepler as well, and actually coached the guy. So that's just how generic that name is.
Oh, that's really interesting. I wonder, have you ever spoken to him about how he found you and like whether he chose you because of your name?
I don't know if that was the case on why he chose me, but yeah, he was a follower, a subscriber of my Substack, and we had an AMA one day, and actually, yeah, and asked me anything, an AMA, and yeah, we got online, and I was trying to set the thing up, and I thought I'd double clicked my invitation into my own AMA, and then I realized it was just a different Dan Jones in the as one of the guests. So it's pretty
That's
crack up.
awesome. That is awesome. It's good that you mentioned your Substack because there is a great Substack. Well, we have a great Substack, and I've linked to it in the show notes. But certainly, there is an article that you've pinned as a top post talking about your history, and I think listeners would be well served to go back and read some of that because it's quite an interesting journey. And goes into some of the stuff like, and I think probably the starting point is just explain a little bit to us about multisport because I know quite a bit about it. It is huge in New Zealand. Uh, the likes of Richie McCaw are now doing quite a bit of multisporting. And I think people outside New Zealand have no idea about it. And I think it's quite cool to hear this background because it really sets up I think part of why you're doing so well in the trail running scene.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you a bit of background. So first of all, I grew up in a family that was real passionate about it. My dad was an international multi-sport or adventure racer. So in the long format of the game, expedition racing, where it's quite common and all across the world, really, there's different teams that would go out and compete in the world championships, big races like the Eco Challenge, Primal Quest, yeah, and yeah, all over. And yeah, you just race continuously 5, 6, 7 days non-stop, where you'd be mountain biking, trekking, kayaking, doing ropes, all this kind of stuff. Just crazy stuff that really just pushes you to the absolute limits, especially when like sleep deprivation and all that kind of thing comes into account. And yeah, so I've done one 6-day race, God's Own, here in New Zealand, and yeah, but more the side that I got into was more the short distance format of the game, the stage racing, where you'd race for 6 or 7 hours, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, and then yeah, go to sleep at night, then come back the next day, race again. And we did a lot of that racing in China over about 3 or 4 years. I did that, and yeah, I mean, it was just I think it just built a huge endurance base, which I think has lent itself to some success in the trail running, which I've now fully swapped into.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I have a bit of a thesis, and we're starting to see it more and more of kind of different specialties emerging in trail running. More a runner archetype versus more of a mountain athlete archetype, right? The classic being maybe Jim versus Killian, and then Jim spent some time trying to convert himself into a mountain athlete or whatever. But I think you bring an interesting background because you've got this amazing running background in addition to this real mountain sport, like adventure background that sort of uniquely places you to be successful across the two different types of race, like sort of that Western States and the UTMB type of archetype. Whereas many people struggle with one or the other based on a background, perhaps. I mean, the exceptions being noted, right? Killian is a different human, or is a different species. But does that sort of stuff, is that going to come back on your radar at all? Or are you like, listen, I don't actually want to go back to any of that?
Well, yeah, I think I'll always have that big passion for the outdoors, and I grew up hunting and still do a lot of fishing and diving and that side of things. I've actually got a thing I might be going out tomorrow for a dive for a bit of spearfishing, and then yeah, so I think that's just built a big base of that cross training side of things, a good passion for different hobbies, and at the moment, sure, I'm not going to be going out and racing any multi-sport or any adventure races. I don't think Adidas Terex would quite like to see me doing just that, And also, you have to be at this level of the game now. How professional the sport has got, you have to be fully all in into setting a goal for the season and really committing yourself fully to that, and probably not leading too far astray on that journey, which multi-sport and adventure racing sure is. But no, I think there's still a lot to be said for building that aerobic base through cross training on the bike, and that is actually something that I've gotten into post UTMB this year in my off season. So I've actually enjoyed getting back on the mountain bike, no crashes, body's still healthy, and it's a really good thing.
Do you find that discipline easy as someone who lives in an outdoorsy area, someone who's always been active and outdoorsy, and trail running becoming increasingly more professional? And I don't know if rigid is the right word, but more structured. Do you find it easy to follow that discipline as a professional?
I do, because I actually do think that some of the hobbies that I do actually lend itself to good cross training. I come out of my summer, which is when I do a majority of my the diving and things. I think when you're diving down and trying to hold your breath for 50 seconds, a minute underwater, and you're twisting and turning, trying to get into cracks, trying to find different crayfish or fish in that area. It's something completely different. And if I'm that disciplined, I'm getting out for my run beforehand, I'm getting out, going to do the dive, and then maybe I've got a recovery run in the afternoon. And I think, when you're out there, you're not sitting on the couch, okay, you're not getting that recovery time, but as long as you make your rest days, your recovery days, proper rest, then I think, you can absorb all those training gains and even those hobby gains as well.
If you look at it from a physical preparation standpoint and more like first principles, it speaks to, in life and within a season, we want to go from more general to more specific, right? And we want to build a sort of multi-sport. And when I say that, I'm not talking about multi-sport, the sport, I'm talking about multiple sports, right? Team sports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, towards and the theory is kind of this pyramid theory of the broader the base, the higher the peak can be, right? So it speaks a lot to that, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I also have a bit of a pet theory that runners, particularly marathoners, not so much trail runners, but are leaving a lot of meat on the bone from a training hour standpoint. When you look at people like Alex Yee's marathon, when you look at the Norwegians in the Ironman World Champs running a 2:30 marathon, at the end of an Ironman World Champs, you think, hang on a second, there may be something here in adding volume from just on the bike. So I think I'd be very concerned if I was your competitors this year, given your off season that you just mentioned there around that. But what does a training week look like for you in general?
In general, so I'm a big fan of quite high mileage, and depending on the race coming up, I'll build elevation, the vert into those training miles as well. So with something like Western States, I'm typically hitting around 200 kilometers plus per week on my bigger, when I'm in that block leading up to the race.
Yep.
And that will look like maybe 8,000 meters of vert in that training week as well. But I do a lot of double days, and I am very specific when it comes to that last proper block leading into my A race. So I'm not doing too much cross training. My body seems to be able to handle the big miles on the legs pretty well. But another thing that I am doing right now in my off season is really getting specific with a good strength routine. So I'm actually going into town once a week and seeing a physio strength coach who puts me through my paces. I do a couple different circuits, and then I actually do some blood flow restriction training as well, to finish off, to really get a lot out of that last hard couple of sets of about 15 reps, usually sit to stands or some squats. Not deep squats, but just really putting the legs through their paces in the last set of my hard strength routine. And then I'll also do another strength, a home routine as well, which isn't quite as hard, but it is still pretty tough.
Yeah, that blood flow restriction has been an interest area of mine for quite a while. I've seen it's just come to the cycling peloton as well. So we'll be hearing much more about it. It makes a lot of sense, though, to remove, particularly if you're doing big kilometers, to try and remove that mechanical stress from joints and bones and then load up the muscles more. So it's just, similar to heat training, which we're going to get onto. It's a way to dissociate internal and external load, right? Or dissociate load. So the mechanical load is so paired to the load of the muscles. If we can dissociate that, it's a nice way to do that for you. You certainly feel, excuse me, you certainly feel a lot fresher coming off a BFR session than you do coming off a traditional strength session. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense for me. What is your, I guess we've already alluded to off-season type of work with a bit more general. We talked about a bit of a specific phase. How does that change for you across a year? Is it very much kind of a couple of cycles of similar stuff where we go more general to more specific, big hours into sort of more specific hours? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair. Usually I'm pretty consistent, like try and keep things fairly consistent, and it'll kind of just be determined by that next kind of lead in to the race. So as we kind of talked about, I've done Tarawera 100K for the last few years, and I'm actually targeting that race again to lead into I guess it'll be a large block. So I'll probably have a couple of weeks like down a little bit after that, and then lead into a quite a long block lead into Western States. But right now, I've just come off Kepler. I'll have a bit of an easier week this week, but then I really want to start building that speed endurance that lends itself to Tarawera 100K. Tarawera is a race where there's not a hell of a lot of vert in that race. There's, I think, 2,200 or a bit over in the 100K race. So yeah, if you're fast and you can hold that speed across, the majority of the distance, you're going to probably do pretty well. And it's a weird one for me because especially last year, I think that was last year, we're not quite past.
This year, 2025, yeah.
I would say 2025, yeah. We're not quite past this, end of the year, calendar year just yet, but it seems like a long time ago. Anyway, I think that was my race of the season. Like everything kind of came together. I was able to run super strong the whole way, and I just felt like I was just flowing. So if I can make my A race of the season, Western States, something like that, then that's the ultimate goal. So I've just got to really like watch how I prepare this year. I'm going to just like listen to the body as I'm going through to February this year and just make sure that, I'm in great shape, but not my best shape, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You don't want to sort of be perfect on Tarawera Day and then struggle off the back of that.
Yeah, and I do think that I can recover. It's just more of a matter of, I think, also a mental mindset, is you want to actually have, something that you can draw on to be like, okay, that was a good performance, but let's make Western States a great performance. I know physically I can recover fine after a fast 100K, but yeah, you just want to have that edge, I suppose, when you come to your peak race.
Yeah, there's certainly a like psychological, emotional toll that you don't want to be spending at Tarawera when you could spend it at Western States, right? There's certainly something there. It's interesting you mentioned how runnable Tarawera is. You came onto my radar winning Tarawera in a pair of super shoes from memory. We don't have to mention the brand, but I remember them not being trail shoes. I remember thinking, this road runner's come across here and absolutely decimated this race in a pair of road shoes. Like that speaks to how runnable it is. So I remember thinking that at the time, going like, oh, that is a runner's race. That is not a mountain athlete's race. So yeah, I remember at the time, I remember Ruth Croft saying something about you as well. Like, watch this guy, he's going to be very good. So that's sort of really sparked a thing in my mind of like, let's see how this guy goes. So you mentioned already a physio that's doing some strength work for you. Who else is in your support team?
Let's see. So yeah, physio Marcos at rehab. We've been working together since just after UTMB, and that's going really well. I guess my partner Michelle, she's been a big part of my support career over the last few years, and my parents as well. For a good period of that time, I've been over to Western States a few times, or a couple of times actually, and so that makes a huge difference. Getting people in your corner that actually know how to get you to work. There's bits and pieces with being a sport crew where you can easily hand off a bottle or do the technical side of things, but it's also the mental side of things that get you going. And when you see them, making sure you don't muck around. And my dad being a professional adventure racing, he's all about efficiency and transitions and all that kind of thing, and he definitely makes me make sure that I'm not mucking around and taking too much time, but getting the essentials done. Yeah, that's big. And then, yeah, of course, we've got the Adidas Terex team, and we work a lot with our teammates and athlete managers. We're spending different periods of time together and build up to races, so it all makes sense that we all we get along, and a lot of us good mates and things like that, because you want to be in that environment where you're relaxed, and yeah, you can be nervous, but you don't want to be stressing out too much, and that logistically, and yeah, you don't have to think about too many things other than getting a good race in. So I think that's been a huge shift in me becoming a professional. That's been awesome, having that big team around us. Yeah.
It's you guys on.
Now, how do you plan out your year? Because you mentioned the Western States obviously being a big one for you. Is that just because you've done well there before it suits you? You want to see if you can get to that top step? Like, how do you plan what your A goal is going to be for the year?
Yeah, that is nowadays. I've been there. I've come close to podium finish, and I still think it's within reach. It was also when I first kind of shifted my attention to the trail running side of things. That's the race that really stuck out to me. Actually, I was over in Kenya just before COVID, and I actually got caught in the whole lockdown. International borders were closing, all that kind of thing, and so I was just like watching YouTube videos. I was like, this Western States, seeing the videos of Jim racing, and he looked fast, but I was like, oh, I'm a marathon. I should be able to roll pretty good Ks through this runnable looking race, and shit, it's nothing like what I probably first imagined, like just rolling up and being able to be quite strong. I mean, I think I'm quite strong, but it's one of the things, seeing it on a computer screen versus being there in the 40-degree heat of a canyon and trying to roll through the last 60k fast. That's tough going, and there's definitely things I want to work on in that race, and things that I still want to get right, and to put together a race that I know I'm capable of. I don't think I've quite done that yet, and there's still work to do.
Yeah, and so So do you mind sharing some of that, or is that proprietary? Are you worried about competitors sort of finding out a bit about that?
Oh no, you can talk the talk, you still got to walk the walk. So I'm sure everyone's got their own things they're working on.
Yeah. So I guess then, what does it look like? What are areas you think you need to fix? Is it just the last 60Ks, feeling strong through that portion and being able to really put your run legs out there, or is there something else that you're targeting as an area for improvement next year? Because I mean, like 3 top 5s, you are a perennial challenger there. It's probably you and Killian that people are looking at next year, going like, these two are the ones to watch. They'd be picking you for podiums. So where is it you think you've got meat left on the bone?
Yeah, I think it all depends on how the race goes out, but a big part of that race is pacing yourself. And I think if you look at, a marathon, the most ideal pacing is even splits, right? And whenever I think about that race, Western States, more so than the marathon, it's like if you go out too hard and you can't run the back half like you should, then there's actually more than just, say, 10 minutes left out there. And of course, you've got to be competitive. You can't let groups go away by too far in the first half, or the first in the high country up in Western States. But I do believe that with an ideal build up and proper pacing, I can set myself up so that I'm comfortable in that altitude, where I can make sure that I'm not trying not to hit threshold too early, and I can stay on top of my nutrition. I work with Precision Fuel and Hydration, and they've been a great asset, and not an asset, a partnership that have helped me really dial everything in, my electrolytes and my carb intake, my hydration as well, which is something that I'm trying to work on, taking more fluids in. Yeah, and also the heat training as well. There's just so many things with Western States that you can look to. With the heat training, in the past, I haven't been scientific. I haven't been specific around it. I've kind of gone into that with okay, if I wear a jacket in this heat, then yeah, that's probably doing pretty good. I'll do some passive heat work with the sauna. But I've actually just started working with Core, who I really hope, I think this is going to make a big difference, where I can get scientific. I can make sure my heat adaptations are working to a certain level where I can, get to Western States confident that I can get through the heat of the day without it, with actually being able to do that and like being adapted to what everything those, 40, 35, 40 degree temperatures throw at me.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think the thing with core that I found is that it probably allows better dosing. It gives you an idea of what that stress is. It really goes like, hey, that jacket is equivalent to X, or that jacket today is this, but tomorrow, because it's colder outside, it's a little bit less. So it really helps with that dosing aspect of it. It's also like just fun to have something that you can sort of talk about your adaptation with. So I'm yet to crack 100%, but I've gotten into the 90s. So I got to pull my finger out and do a bit more work on it. But a little bit easier when you've got higher training volumes as you do, rather than I do. But just back on the training thing, thinking about your year, is it still going to be are you still looking at second half of the year UTMB? I mean, those are the two big races, is kind of Western States and UTMB. So it's always tempting to do the double like that. Or is it, or are you think like, I mean, they're not that far apart. So I think that double is very difficult. There's not a lot of men who've ever succeeded with it. So yeah, how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really good question because, as you say, it's a not an easy double to do. So what I've done in the past is I have always prioritized Western States. So I've like put that first, and I've kind of made the decision after that on how I'm feeling, whether I do UTMB or CCC. So in the past, my first year at Western States and then UTMB, I decided on UTMB, and I got 12th at UTMB that year. And I felt there was still a lot left out there, and whether that was, fatigue in the legs or lack of experience at running the full loop, there's probably a lot to be said for that. Then the next year I did, as you kind of said before, I did CCC and I got 4th. And so this year, I really don't know. I want to put all my eggs in the basket of Western States, and whether I go to UTMB or have a bit more of an off season or choose a different race around the world, that's kind of yet to be decided for me. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a concrete answer on that one.
No. I think that's important because when people are thinking about their years, like be it listeners or other professionals, right? There's this thought towards okay, let's plan a whole year, but the reality is, if you win Western States, things change. If you for some reason DNF at Western States and you pull out early in the race, that changes things as well because you'll be a lot fresher in some respects. So it's very different. So I think any planning beyond Western States is very much in pencil, even if you had it, right? You could tell me your whole year, and in mentally I'd be going, okay, well, that's all in pencil because, the goalposts move very quickly for elites, especially with you. You've got a family as well. Like there are other aspects that are important that may move things for you. Yes, you're a professional athlete, but I'm sure that, family's a big part of it, and how that works, how the little one's traveling physically in terms of like going to races and stuff like that. Do you want to spend time away? Because I know, with Adidas, you guys get the Terex house that everyone always talks about. I know exactly where it is. I know the house in Chamonix. You guys go spend a bunch of time there and prep and as a team, but it's like, well, does that work for now that you have a family, or do you have to rent a place? What does that do financially? How does that all work? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How much time do you want to be away from your son? So, there's humans behind racing, right? It's not just a number on a screen that we're dot watching around a mountain. So I think it's a very it's a salient point. But on that, you talk about legs feeling good and that. How are you monitoring adaptation, recovery, these sort of things? Like, is it something you factor into your training? How do you adapt around it?
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. Like sometimes I take note of the data. I'm partnered with Sunto, and I use all my sleep scores and my HRV. I look at that every morning. I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty high. Hopefully training's good today. Or that's low. I'll still go out and train hard. Who cares? No. But I get more of a sense. I get a sense from the data, but I also got to listen to the body. So I'll go out and train, and oh mate, since Hudson was born, I've been a bit sick here and there, and it's like, the whole house got absolutely slammed, and then we're just kind of recovering. I was like, I better go and do some faster turnover stuff before Kepler. So I went out and did 4 times 5 minutes. I was like, okay, let's sit at sub threshold or threshold here. And then, of course, I got rolling. I got started. And I was like, oh, I feel like crap, but I've just got to blow out the Culvers and go as hard as I can. And like, I ended up just like in my cool down, just walking home. I was absolutely cooked. I was like, oh no, what an idiot. What have I done here? I talked about this in one of my Substacks recently, but then I was like, oh, what an idiot. Like, this is going to set me back. And then the next day I felt great. I went out for 2 hours, just felt great. I was like, you know, sometimes you just got to roll with it. And yeah, there's like, you know, you follow some of the data, and sometimes you just got to believe that things will come right as well, and hope things don't, you know, bog you down, or you don't dig a hole for yourself. And yeah, I mean, I definitely look at what I've been doing, and I know that, okay, yeah, you've been doing some big weeks. Maybe a couple easier days is a good thing, but for the most part, I find that you're pretty resilient when you've been doing this year after year after year, and you know those years add up. It's not like a person new to running or someone that's got a historical young training age that they're going to go out and recover like that. It's like, you know, you build up such a big amount of resilience when you've just stacked up a lot of training like that, and you draw on that as well, like mentally when you're out there doing the big miles.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. It's actually, this strikes a chord with a lot of stuff we've been talking about recently. Alfie Manthorpe recently joined us and was talking about being self-coached, and I assume that's your situation as well. And it kind of, I mentioned that knowing, because you're self-coached, understanding things deeply means you can modify things on the run. You could say,
You know
okay,
what?
yeah, it's,
I've only just recently become self-coached, to be fair.
yep,
It's just I just looking for a change, and at the moment I am just rolling off my own kind of thoughts and
yep.
processes. But yeah, whether that will change in the future or not will yet to be decided or seen.
Yeah, but even if you do have a coach, that ability to understand coaching, you coach yourself, etc., or you are a coach yourself,
Mm.
that sort of thing makes a big difference to your ability to modify things on the fly. But then similarly, we have an upcoming conversation with Marco Altini talking about HRV, and he was talking about, you know, the importance of feeling as well in there, not just the data. And this is a man who's built an HRV app, so yeah, I think he'd support a lot of what you're doing in that respect. So yeah,
You're right.
it's cool to hear that's mirrored in your experiences.
Can I just jump in you quick, Dan? Did you say earlier you were training in Kenya before COVID? Is that when you were still pursuing a road career?
Yeah, yeah. So my best marathon was over on the Gold Coast, and that was in June, whatever year it was. It must have been 2019 because that was the year before COVID.
Yep.
And then just after that race, I was like, oh yeah, that went pretty good. Oh, I mean, I don't think I was destined to be an office worker, or you
It
know, that
doesn't look like it.
career in
No.
finance wasn't quite. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like I got great opportunities. PwC were an awesome company to work for, and I had a great team. But yeah, it just wasn't quite for me at that time, especially. And so I put all my eggs in the basket of I did my like a PT course, and I did some like thought I'd do some coaching on the side, and yeah, put like really try and give everything to try and wear the black singlet in the marathon at the World Champs if I could make it there. And so yeah, I trained pretty hard for the remainder of 2019, and then 2020 I had Hanover Marathon lined up over in Europe, and so I decided I would do like 5 weeks. I think it was about 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks of training in Kenya at altitude in it, I-10, E10, home of the champions, and yeah, I just did that. And then of course COVID came. I just didn't, you know, I didn't put the weight behind it. I thought, you know, it would just pass quickly and it'll be a nothing thing. And then of course it just got worse and worse. And yeah, borders closed and I got stuck there for like 5 months. So it was pretty interesting, full on experience. Full on in the sense that you just had no control over, but there wasn't a lot to do apart from run. And even then that got not taken away, but certainly the experiences got taken away where you weren't really allowed to train with others. And that's the whole point of going over to E10. So yeah, I mean, I did manage to get back to New Zealand, and I raced Auckland Marathon and Kepler Challenge and Queenstown Marathon and all this. And then the next year I trained up for Gold Coast Marathon again, but then like 2 or 3 days before, COVID went across Australia and then cancelled that marathon just before I was supposed to fly over there. So it was crazy. But I mean, yeah, I know it was just shutting a lot of things down. And by that stage, you know, you train up so many different times for your biggest ones. I was like, oh well, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to race in a fast marathon anytime soon. So why don't we try and target that golden ticket and get over to Western States.
Awesome. And any desires to try another road marathon, given all of the work you've done on the trails? Like, because I mean, we're seeing that more and more, right? Jim went and did Olympic trials a couple of years ago. Courtney's just run CIM. So, is there anything there that you're thinking about?
Oh yeah, like I know Precision, they sponsor CIM, so that would be such a sick one to do. But whether it's this stage of the career or when I've ticked off a few things that I really want to concentrate on, or obviously Western States, that's the big one right now. So when I've achieved what I want to achieve, then maybe another road marathon might be on the cards.
So what I'm hearing is you're going to win Western States this year. Go over to UTMB, win that, and then go win CIM as well. So it sounds like a big year for you, but seems doable.
Yeah, it sounds bloody good.
Yeah. Any thoughts towards or inspiration from any road ultras? Xylon's in a country that's full of them, that loves them. So and despite what listeners may not know, is he's run both of them, Two Oceans and Comrades. So anything like that ever tickle your fancy?
Oh yeah, I think I was dead keen to do Comrades, like coming from the marathon as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't really line up, being I think 3 or 4 weeks before Western States. So, oh man, yeah, it's definitely a race I'd like to do in the future. But at the moment, yeah, my goals are where they're set.
Yeah.
It'll be there for a long time. It's just whether you can go do it and not worry about being competitive and just enjoy it. But it'll be there for a long time waiting for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty professional. Like the road guys are fairly professional, but at the same time, given your road background and that, I'd say depending on when you decide to do it, right? If it's in 30 years from now, maybe it's not so questionable. But I don't think a top 10 would be a challenge for you. I think that'd be pretty doable.
I know how competitive it is, but I think that just the experience of doing such a historical race, it's a bit like Western States, but I don't know how long it's been going for, longer than that, but it seems like such a cool thing to do.
On a similar note, to dream races and historical races and all those things, and given your multi-sport background, did things like Tour de Geants or PTL interest you in any way?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I think UTMB just UTMB is an adventure in itself enough for me at the moment. I think part of the reason why Western States is my number one goal is because it's also fast runnable. I still think I've got a lot of work to do in the mountains, and if I can maybe one day now, or like get a lot of training in proper hills that you get over in Europe, then like have a good race at UTMB, then there's probably things to look beyond that, but there's a lot to go in the meantime.
Yeah, well, they say Tour de Geants is the race you do when you want to quit running, so that makes sense. I mean, Francois might be the exception, but yeah, it's a brutal race. I've certainly had some friends do it. Yeah.
Dan, I want to ask you quickly. I saw on your Instagram with Precision Fuel and Hydration, you took 110 grams of carbs an hour. Did I say that right? I just got off a plane and I just landed and I haven't had enough coffee yet. It sounded wrong in my head. Carbs an hour, yes.
Yeah.
And like how is that? How do you train your gut for that? And then also these aid stations, what do you call them? The crewing around, getting help. It's like a Formula One pit stop at the moment, man. It's insane to see. Just talk to us through that whole process.
Yeah, well, I think people have realized there's so much time to be made up there these days, especially. Now you see people like jumping into big tubs full of ice water, which is crazy. I didn't even think about that, but if that's available to you, then why wouldn't you? You're basically doing that, and someone's handing you gels and filling your waist belt and stuff at the same time. It all can be done pretty quickly. But then, of course, you've just got to make sure that you take care of yourself. You get cool. You make sure you try and get that core temperature down while you're in the aid stations and have that available to you. I still think you've got to get the things done right and then move from there. But yeah, just part of the fueling thing is I actually still think there's leaps to be made there in the running world, because the biggest I guess, leveler is almost, the carbs and like how much energy you can get in. And you're seeing cyclists, you're seeing Ironman athletes. They are hitting massive numbers, especially when you account that they're not taking anything in on their swim. They're smashing a lot on the bike, but then they're still running, which is what we're doing. They're running on a full gut. And hitting massive numbers. So, essentially they're doing exactly what we're doing, but we can spread out the carb intake, the electrolyte intake, the hydration intake across the whole race. And yes, it might seem like a lot, but if you think a 90-gram gel, a 90-gram precision gel is actually not that hard to eat. It's just as long as you make sure that your stomach is able to deal with it. And you can practice. Just, I know, not everyone can just go and hit gels all the time. It's not like, they don't grow on trees. But if you just smash a 90-gram gel, if you got one available to you, and run on it, run hard on it, it's actually probably going to sit all right. It's actually just making sure all the other stresses are dealt with at the same time. I think it's more the heat and stuff that starts messing with your gut. If you can be really consistent with your effort across all of that and keep on top of the heat and your energy levels, which does involve maybe ruining your gut a little bit, but if you can deal with it, you can deal with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. We spoke to Sam Shepard from Precision post UTMB post Western States about the crewing and some of the stuff that happens there and how they're thinking about it. So that was really cool insights from him, because I do think Western States is unique in that you can have as many crew as you want, whereas at UTMB there's limits and those sort of things. So it does change the dynamic there. It does make it a bit more of a Formula One. And then there's minutes, right? Any minute you save in the aid station is a minute you don't have to save running. So it makes a lot of sense. And what you say around that carb stuff is spot on in terms of like heat and its impacts, and then how close you guys are running. I mean, you guys are, I don't think people understand how hard you guys are running for how long. Like, they know how fast you're running, but I don't think they understand what that is from an internal load perspective. Like, you guys are spending, like, if you looked at a textbook, it'd say that, given it's however many hours, 16 hours, 17 hours, that means that it's all below first threshold. But I'll guarantee you that is absolutely garbage. You guys are getting much closer to second threshold at times than you are staying below first threshold.
Oh yeah, and especially like some of those hills. You go up the escarpment at the start, and you start in like 2,000 meters. And even if you put in altitude work, for me, like running up those hills or just trying to keep up on those hills is pretty next level. Like, I look down at my heart rate, like, oh, Jesus, this is, I've got to like sustain this for a long time. And I think another big point is it's racing. Like, it's not just like you're going out and there's no one else around you. You get into your own groove. Like, if you want to actually be competitive, it's properly racing. Like, you're going back and forth with different people. Some people might be a minute or two up the road, but you know that you're always going to be in it at Western States. There can be massive blow-ups that you can catch up to people, but you have to be basically making sure that you're in it. And that also puts a lot of stress on everything. You can't just settle in and jog or like run away. A bit like how I've felt at Tarawera. So I think, I've gotten used to feeling comfortable at running my own race like that. But there's something to be said for like handling the stress of being in that racing environment where you're always swapping places.
Yeah, I think that's a really salient point around the difference between pacing and racing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can pace your best performance time wise at Western States is probably paced, but that may mean that you disconnect from a group, and that may be suboptimal from other aspects of it, right? So there's the decision making around, do I go with them or not? Do I stay with this pack? How hard do I push, etc., is really difficult to make. And I mean, we're starting to see the opposite at UTMB, where people are pacing it a lot more, who are being a lot more measured. Ruth, Tom, other examples, both last year and this year. Last year and this year. Again, it's always weird at the end of a year, because the kind of trail running season's done for the most part. So now it's kind of like onto the next year. But I do think we're seeing an aspect of that. And I'm wondering if that'll end up coming into Western States to some degree. I mean, Killian maybe to some degree last year did a little bit of that, ended up in third. But you wonder if he could have eked out a little bit if he'd stayed with them, or it's hard to think about. But I think that is a really important point for people to remember, is that like that is a very different dynamic. It is probably the biggest difference between the front of the field and the rest of the field is not the time duration, but the mental aspects of actually having to worry about where you are in a field and what does that look like tactically and all those things. Because for everybody else, it's like, here's my pacing plan. I do my pacing plan and I'll be fine, right? So for you
Yeah.
guys, it's very different.
And that actually makes the nutrition plan a lot easier as well, because you're taking the Xylon when you want to take the Xylon, or you're stopping to fill up your flask when you want to. And yes, I guess you should be doing that, theoretically when you're up the front as well. But sometimes it's not like that. You're like, oh shit, there's a hill, and I just want to maintain that gap. And sometimes it is easier said than done.
Yeah, and I think that's where it becomes a wicked problem to solve, particularly at Western States, where you've got heat and all those things, and hills, and then pace dynamics and group dynamics, because where you fuel and how you fuel and what you take when becomes a bit more challenging, as you've just said. But then similarly, your ability to be able to bang a whole 90 gel and go, because that was what suited the race situation, becomes even more important. That's absolutely fascinating to think about that. It becomes a very complex problem to solve. Yeah, it's and I guess that is why it's intoxicating, right? You're getting just enough reward, top fives, just enough to keep you interested and hungry, with just enough things you can improve on that you think, yep, I can win this thing. So that's really, really cool insight. Anything else from you, Zion?
No, I think we leave it there. I think this is really, really insightful. I find it very interesting how you plan your year, how you structure your year. The family dynamics is interesting. We didn't dive deeper into that, but obviously it's all still new for you. So it'll be interesting to see how you go forward making decisions around travel, racing, logistics, and all that kind of thing. So good luck with that. You seem very smart at how you approach things, and I think your finance professional background probably has transferred somewhat to your racing career, and you probably take a lot of skill and learning and planning from that. So no doubt we're going to see you only get better and better in the future.
Yeah, well, Kepler was a bit of a tester. It was our first family trip away, and Hudson went very well. He was a happy boy, and not too many tears. So it was a good sign of things to come, hopefully. I know, you can't always, what do they say? You can't always, count on historical historical things to happen in the future. There's something like that in my finance, background. But I guess looking forward as well, we're going to get to test that again at Tarawera. We hope to go over to the States to get prepared for Western States all together as a family. So, there'll be. I'm very fortunate to not have to be that. I guess that I get to have the family with me and not just have to leave all the time. So that will be very cool, and I'm excited for these new experiences. So thanks for bringing that up.
No, of course. I think it provides some real perspective for people that can help. Depends on personality, of course, but I certainly remember catching up with Tom before UTMB and thinking, this daughter's sorted him out. He's going to win this race. So it certainly can help people with perspective, I think, and really, perspective. There's nothing more to say there, but we do appreciate that, particularly in you joining us, particularly in the context of having a young one at home. It's probably right around the witching hour over there in New Zealand to make time zones work. So we do appreciate that, Dan, and thanks so much. And we'll be following along, as will our fans.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I have to say the witching hour is a real thing, but really appreciate the catch up, guys, and the good chats.
Thanks so much.
Right. What did you think about Dan Jones? Like, Kiwis are just so relaxed, aren't they?
Yeah, we agreed pre-recording not to talk any rugby, which I think was wise. But he was great. Great insights. Just it's cool to see this generation of athletes really taking ownership and insight into their own training, really understanding it. I think it makes a huge difference. Cool to see that new dads succeeding as well, and new mums, of course. But I'm fascinated to follow him. As I said, a lot of people will be picking him for a podium this year at Western States, given the way the fields have landed, because both the top two, Caleb and Chris from last year, are not racing. And so Killian was in third and he's there. And then Dan was in, I think, fifth and he's there as well. So certainly be one of the early race favorites. He's had a lot of experience there. So he's got Tarawera coming up. I think he will be the unbackable favorite at Tarawera. So let's see how he goes there.
Let's get to this week's doctor's office now. Every man and his dog seems to be doing paddle or pedal, depending where you're from, or pickleball. And one thing I always hear people talk about are injuries, and my friends who played, how often they get injured. But you actually found an interesting article with regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is like it's people get obsessed with these things, and it's a very different movement pattern and all those sort of things. There's also, classic racket sport injuries like tennis elbow, etc. It's called that for a reason. So there's certainly those risks, but the ball's moving quite quickly, and people are, these sports slant older, let's say. So there's certainly a risk there with respect to, ball speed and stuff. So I saw an article come up, and it was estimated the incidence of pickleball related eye injuries has increased by 450 cases annually from 2021 to 2024. So there were more pickleball-related ocular injuries among patients aged 50 and older than among patients 50 and younger, which that's not just ocular injuries, that's every injury. I guarantee you older people get injured more than younger people. But this was interesting is how severe these were. There were severe eye injuries included retinal detachment, so your retina detaches,
Whoa.
which is wild, orbital fracture, globe trauma, and high femur. So high femur is when you get blood in your eye. The high femur makes sense. You get hit by the ball in your eye, you get blood in your eye, fine. Similarly, to get globe trauma makes sense. Again, ball hits you. Orbital fractures make some sense if you get hit with a bat. So if you're going for a ball and somebody swings, right, that makes sense.
Or if you get hit by a cricket ball, I think.
Yes, but these are not cricket balls, right? These balls are a lot slower. It's the bat, it's the paddle that hits you.
So you reckon that's where the injury is coming from? Okay.
Well, an orbital fracture is because that's so much force, right? That's a very hard bone in your body. So it's certainly not the ball that's doing that. But retinal detachment is the ball, which is scary. So there's a call of maybe we should have some eye protection here. But yeah, so the mechanism of injury, as we said, paddles, falls, and then direct hits from the pickleball. So I just found this really interesting to see how many people are getting injured playing this. It's always worthwhile when we talk about injury surveillance, though. You always normalize it to hours of play. Right, so we don't talk about how many injuries we have in a year. We have how many injuries we're having per hour of play or per 1,000 hours of play, because that's really important, right? If you look at running injuries and you're not accounting for number of hours run, it doesn't make any sense because people run for more than they play paddle or whatever. So you need to normalize it for per person hour or something like that, or per 1,000 person hours.
Well, thanks for finding that, son. What are we watching this weekend? I will be watching football, Premier League. Being back at home, I'm going to plonk myself on the couch, rightly so. Also be watching a bit of cricket. South Africa is playing India in the T20 in the men's team. We lost the first one, unfortunately. What are you watching?
There might be another Ashes test on. I can't remember when they start because they just seem to finish so quickly. These English just can't put up a fight, really. But I will probably keep an eye on the T100. The final is up, but it's Friday. I don't know why. I assume it's because there's a big participation component on Saturday and Sunday. So they're doing it on Friday. Qatar? It's in the UAE somewhere. It's like Qatar
Friday
or Dubai.
Makes sense then, I think. Friday's like their weekend, so...
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, I didn't know that. That's learning for me. That's good. Thank you, mate. But yeah, I'm interested to see how Imogen Simmons goes there, given she had to pull out of Phuket with some illness. So this will be her sort of reintroduction. So I'm interested to see how she races and how she does there. I imagine it was very difficult. Dan talked about the difficulties of sort of training through COVID with like events releasing. I'm sure it was even worse when you're not sure if you'll ever be able to race again for Imogen. So it'll be interesting to see if she's done a ton of training, is really competitive, or if she like couldn't do a lot of training because she couldn't motivate herself and is just here to like blow some cobwebs off, take a bit of a paycheck, reintroduce herself to racing for the following season, really.
I'll be watching that then. No, I want to see the outcome of that as well. Thanks for picking that up. Appreciate it. This has been a big episode. We're getting towards the end of the year. And the next week, as we mentioned, we've got our wrapped episode coming up. I'm looking forward to that. See what our predictions were for this past year, how we did, and then also predictions for next year. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, you don't want to miss that, please do so and subscribe now. David, thanks so much for putting that together.
Thank you, mate. I'll talk to you next time.
Catch you on the next one.